Hello, Booktuf. As you can see, I'm here with Nas. This is her second appearance in this channel. She doesn't have a channel or anything, but she's a very active viewer and commentator in Booktuf. So I thought I'd make this video with her.
Hey.
She's also my roommate slash friend slash co-writer and many other things. So yeah, I just was like, we were trying to write an essay for a class that we both sort of like attend to, and then I like something popped on my feed and I realized that like, you know, I saw the Hannah's tag on Nonfiction and I realized that we are like in Nonfiction November, which of all booktube events is my favorite one, and I bet it's also your favorite one because
Yeah.
Nonfiction is also her favorite sort of like form of writing or reading. And I was like, yeah, I mean, like I've been keeping my readings for myself because I have like assigned readings, and then I have like the own readings that I want to do, the writing projects that require readings as well. So it was like, okay, I cannot participate in nonfiction, although I have read some nonfiction, but in Nonfiction November, right? But now we are pretty much at the equator of Nonfiction November. It's 15th of November today. I don't know if this video will come out today or tomorrow, but because my phone takes a while to upload the videos. But I was like, okay, I only have a few books with me because, as I said before, I cannot store all of my books with me. But I have access to a massive library in the university, so I just picked a few books that were familiar to me, that I have read or that I have heard about, that I have opened in the past, and maybe DNF. But they're all books that I, in some way or another, I can recommend. So this is the top 10 plus one or top 9. I didn't even count them. I honestly, I picked them a moment away. I already don't remember which ones they are. But approximately top 10 nonfiction, or more accurately, top 10 philosophy, because most of these books are philosophy, since the philosophy section was the closest one, and also I feel like we are both better read in philosophy than we are in sort of like nonfiction as a whole. I'll make a non-fiction book at some point. So we're just gonna very quickly talk about the books, and I'll sort of like, we can sort of like maybe say how much do we recommend them, or how little, and yeah. But in no particular order, let's start with the first one.
Yeah.
This is Jean-Jacques Rousseau, The Confessions. We have a friend that on his first year was obsessed with this book. And
no, that was
Jack was crazy for the Rousseau's Confessions. No, also Augustine's Confessions, but
okay.
Like Jack loved Rousseau. I'm sure about that.
Okay.
And to be fair, like we've all read the discourses from Rousseau. Mm-hmm. I've also read his social contract. Is that? Yeah, I think it's his social contract and some other texts. And I find Rousseau to be a very good writer, very, very compelling, very engaging. I would have liked to listen to him in some of those discourses that he made. I'm referring to the Origins of Inequality and the other one, I don't remember the name. But yeah, so this, we have it on pretty good, very reliable sources, that it's a nice, sort of like autobiographical text. And we actually have been reading some of this in my autobiography anthology, the one I found in the charity shop. And it seemed quite interesting. We kept underlining. So there you go, The Confessions from Rousseau. Next book. Okay, maybe this might sound like it's a bit heavy for reading. I know you were probably expecting like Silent Earth or some more pop science or something more less dense.
Don't undermine your viewers. Maybe they were expecting.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, like I'm a Marx lover in some ways, and Philosophical Manuscripts was they are the first text from Marx. The first text that got to me from Marx and from Marxism were here. The Strange Labor, Generic Being, those two texts. Like, I mean, I cried the first time I read Strange Labor, but that's because my labor was very strange back in then. I don't know what you thought about it.
I mean, yeah, I think I loved all like the different essays. I don't know if it was like 3 or 4 essays in here. They were all amazing. I think at this point I've probably read all of them. I think it's really good. I think it's probably, I haven't read or finished the entirety of Das Kapital, but like all of Marx's works that I have read, this is probably my favorite, I think.
Okay.
It feels the most didactic, and it feels the most like
Accessible as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you were ever wondering about Marx and his theory, do not read the manifesto.
No, I mean the manifesto is pretty cool. Like, I think, it's like, like a little piece of...
It's a manifesto.
Yes, but I think they stop with the manifesto.
Okay.
It's a gateway drug.
Well, there you go, 50-50.
A gateway to Marx.
50-50. I say start with this.
Okay.
Could you pick the next one?
This is Negative Dialectics by Theodor Adorno.
I don't know, like, I promise there are other books here that are not brain suicide when it comes to reading them. For some reason, the hardest ones came first. But yeah, tell us a little bit, what do you know about this book?
So I know nothing about this book, actually, but I do know about Adorno. At least I'm hoping to know a lot about him very soon. Actually, like you, the one who I saw him sort of like try to grapple with this book last year and collapse. And I don't think he finished this, right?
Yeah.
But it's really, I mean, like, at least from what I've heard about Adorno, it should be good. It should be hard, but it should be good.
Some other books from Adorno are much more accessible and much more interesting, much more rewarding to read as well. This is the hardest book that I've ever read, and I have read the Phenomenology of Spirit, so I mean, that's very hard. I did not get through the whole book, but it's not because it was a bad book, it's because it was too hard to understand. Those are two different things. So this is not a bad book, this is just very hard. And some readers have a very masochistic approach to what they read. So I'm only putting this in the top nonfiction because, first of all, it's one of these books that felt like just too big for me. The concepts, what it was, like just too big. It expected too much of me as a reader, which in some ways makes me wanna go back to it. And if any book that makes me wanna go back to it is a recommend. However, I am one of those readers who is a little bit of a masochistic reader, which means that I don't mind suffering through a book if the book doesn't give me what I want straight away. And this definitely will require some high tolerance for that kind of merciless writer.
Yeah, maybe it would be nice to start with, like, I don't know, maybe like the jargon of authenticity or something a bit, like, I'd say with Adorno, like, know him a bit better before I guess you, like, throw yourself into that one.
He has an introduction to dialectics, which, I mean, before you read the negative dialectics, an introduction could be good. But this is of like, I mean, you only ever read Adorno if you are already really into philosophy. Like, if you read a lot of philosophy and you are like, okay, what's a weird sort of like niche that is already expecting me to know the whole history of philosophy, then you're going to Adorno. So yeah, maybe don't start with, if you're planning to start with philosophy, there are other books here that might be more relevant. At some point I'll make a top 10 books to start reading philosophy. But yeah, that's it. Okay, let's go for something easier, more friendly. Okay, this is not the nonfiction. I just took this to remember the book that I wanted to recommend, but it's not this book. I'm holding this so that you know I'm talking about Bradbury, and because it's cool to hold a book, it's just like, you know.
Material.
Yeah, but have you ever, like, what's your favorite book on writing?
On writing?
Yeah.
I feel like the book that I read was about reading, but in a way was also about writing, was A Swim in the Pond.
A Swim in the Rain.
By George Sanders. That was incredible.
That is the book that debunked my previous favorite book on writing, which was Sending the Word of Writing by, I think it's, Sending the Art of Writing by Ray Bradbury, which was by far my favorite book on writing for a long time. Also, I think, I mean, I keep saying this of books all the time, but I think it was the first book I ever read in English. It was definitely the first book I read on electronically, on a tablet or an ebook. So, yeah, for me to be able to get through a book on an ebook for the first time in a foreign language, that says a lot. It's a really good book. I mean, Zen in the Art of Writing is a really good book. It's super engaging, super playful. It's not like talking down to you, it's not teaching you, it's not preaching. It's just like playing with writing while talking about writing, talking about what he thinks you should do if you want to write 10,000 words a day, I think is what he says, which sounds like a lot. But yeah, I definitely love that book and I recommend it. Next. Oh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this feels a little bit too small for being the book that I actually wanted to recommend. Have you read it?
Yes.
Okay. This is Mill's On Liberty, John Stuart Mill on Liberty. Also one of the very first philosophy books that I read. I mean, philosophy, nonfiction, essays, it's all the same. I made already a video, kind of, on this topic, but anything that has a will to truth, anything that's trying to that is sort of like trying to communicate some form of knowledge, and that is more important for the book than its form or literary quality, is, in my opinion, philosophy. So all nonfiction, in my opinion, is philosophy. However, when it comes to philosophy, this is a really nice book from a really nice utilitarian. He also has some biographical texts that I've heard wonders about. People tend to love him as a figure as well as a writer. And yeah, I have very good memories of this. So if you are interested in the topic of liberty, this is definitely the place to start. Anything to...
No, it was cool. I read it for my first year in my politics degree, so I feel like I didn't really, like I remember the experience of reading it, and I think I quite enjoyed it, but I don't think it stuck with me as a book, to be honest.
Oh, okay, there you go. This is why this is a pre-improvised, pre-casual top 10 nonfiction. You choose.
Okay, this is Bertrand Russell on the problems of philosophy. I actually don't know much about Russell, to be honest.
You didn't read the history of philosophy or anything?
I haven't read most of his books on philosophy. I feel like I should have, but I just never really got to it. I wasn't really interested in his works, to be fair. At least I remember I read an essay by him, but in my first year, but I don't think I picked up his book after that. So.
Fair enough. I find Russell to be a very good writer. I also like his biographical texts. When I say biographical texts, I mean that I have read him writing about himself, but I never read his full biography cover to cover or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, The Problems of Philosophy is one of the best books to start reading about philosophy. I read that, and I read his History of Philosophy. People criticize his history of philosophy for being not mega accurate, or sometimes modifying concepts in order to make them more understandable. I don't know that that's very important. Anyways, you're not going to understand philosophy or any concept pretty much not to the degree that they need to be understood with reading any history for the first time. So he's a very good place to start, and he has a really good understanding of what he's teaching, and for me, it was incredibly helpful. One of the very first times that I was reading a history, and I was enjoying that, and I was not just doing it for the informative value. So there you go. I also recommend a lot his essays on human nature. Although they are very simple, they are very good as a start point to think about the subject. So there you go. Bertrand Russell, I recommend everything he wrote, especially I think his memoirs or biography. I don't remember what it was, but I remember there was something like that was pretty cool. The Origins of Totalitarianism from Hannah Arendt. What do you have to say about this book?
This again was one of my DNFs when I was in first year. I think if I was to read this book now, I think I would probably agree with it, and I'd probably be able to finish it. But I just never really go back to the book. But in general, I do really like Hannah. I think her work is incredible. Not always. I think a lot of points, a lot of her political writings, I do find a lot of inaccuracies, especially when she conjures her work with Sartre or Fanon and stuff like that. But in general, I feel I quite like her readings, and I would recommend maybe her shorter books to start with, and then building up to The Origins.
Fair enough. I think my favorite text from Hannah so far has been his. He has like there was a edition of Penguin Classics, a very short book on freedom, and I found it very, very insightful. Like it was full of ideas about freedom that I hadn't thought of, and freedom is one of the things I have written more essays about. So I loved it. I haven't read this book. I mean, I have read this book, but I haven't read the full book cover to cover. I read a PDF that was an abridged version of this book, which I know some people will say that is an abomination to do that. However, it was really good for understanding the book. I love the concept of the banality of evil, and I fully agree with that. Which, yeah, is sort of like, yeah, I totally recommend this book, period. Okay. You don't need to have read this book to know what it is about.
I guess so.
I only picked this because it was in the way to hear. This is, as I said again, this is a very casual video. We were just studying for hours, and I was like, I feel like making a video. She was there waiting for me. I was like, join, you know. And here we are now. So this is the Hippocratic writings. So I feel like this is a must read in terms of people who is interested in canonic writings. Is it called, I think in English you call it the Hippocratic Oath. It's something that you will be familiar with. For students of medicine, but also students of philosophy, history, incredibly interesting. I find it, like for me, a sort of like sub-genre that I find very, no, I don't know if it's even a sub-genre or what it is, but reading about texts about medicine that are outdated is something that I find very interesting and enjoyable. Yeah, that's it. I find it incredibly interesting. Like if you sort of like read it knowing that you are not reading this in order to obtain information, but just for like the pure morbidity from the morbidity of like knowing what these guys did then and what they thought was like truth. It's just interesting. It's just very interesting, and anecdotically, and also just I don't know. Maybe I'm a freak when it comes to this, but I actually enjoy a lot reading about medicine, outdated medicine texts. Okay, you have read this. I have read this.
Yeah.
This is my favorite Freud so far.
I think it was definitely my most interesting Freud. I don't think I'd probably pursue Freud more than I have. Mainly because I feel like I think like the perspective of already knowing where his work ends up and the contentious of it makes it much harder for me to go back to his like sort of like foundational texts. But this was really good. This was really, I remember like one essay where he was sort of talking about like I can't remember what it was about, but it was really interesting about like oceans and like I can't remember what it was about actually.
The oceanic feeling.
Yes.
Actually, hated those first 15 pages. I hated them.
That's what I found really interesting about him.
Really?
I found it really provocative.
All right.
And I really liked it in that way. But
yeah. I mean, I feel like I hated it because I was definitely subject to his critique there. So like the first 15 pages is him sort of like making a psychoanalysis of people who sort of like has a pantheistic mystification or understanding of the world.
Yeah.
And if I ever were to be superstitious or religious in any way, I would definitely be pantheistic in an animistic sort of way. So I felt like, you know, it hit home, you know.
But I don't think I would recommend this, honestly.
I definitely recommend it. I think it's incredibly interesting. This is a tracing of civilization from the beginning to now. His thoughts in the beginning are just abstractions of the present to the past, which means that they are wrong and very simple-minded, and that justifies some of his prejudices. And I hated that part when he sort of like assumes that, you know, hunter-gatherers had a nuclear family as the structure of the homestead. But once you move away from there and it keeps moving forward, I feel like his critiques and everything, like he dismantles some of the assumptions about civilization that you might have made, and why does civilization sort of like what are the weaknesses of the idea of civilization? Where does it work? Where does it not work? And also from this text you can almost see how some of the most tragic events that have happened in history were inevitable. So yeah, I highly recommend it. Despite a good, this is a 100 pages text, so 30 of these pages are just bullshit, but that doesn't make them not enjoyable. And finally,
The Taint for Modern Life and Other Essays by Charles Baudelaire. Right. Have you read any Baudelaire before?
that book.
Only this book.
I also read The Flowers of Evil, but I read it in French and I don't speak French, so...
So he hasn't read it. But I quite liked Baudelaire, honestly. It was my first time sort of reading. I don't know what you would categorize his kind of work as.
Well, he definitely is how you say, art theory, and he has an aspect of like art theory, like analyzing paintings, analyzing different aspects of society that he considers artistical or in an artistical sort of way, lenses. But he also writes poetry. So there you go.
Yeah, I think this is actually going to be quite an interesting read. I think I would recommend this.
Yeah, me too. Baudelaire is a all-terrain writer. Like, he was very opinionated and very unapologetic and very ahead of his time. He was bringing modernism very much on his writings and on his conversations before modernism, almost. So he was one of the first figures to defend that movement with all its flaws, you know, in order to compensate the elevation of nature that Rousseau and others did before the Victorian era. He pretty much mystifies civilization. He has texts here like saying that defending the crowd, the idea of the crowd, defending anything that symbolizes civilization, technology, all of that, elevating it. One good thing that what he's doing is sort of like destroying the myth of nature, and now sort of like civilization and being like reason has taken over, but in reality it's just changing one myth for another. He very systematically defends and replaces every previous assumption about what is good and what is bad by inverting it. He defends anything that is a product of human artifice, from cars to the crowds to makeup. Like makeup, yeah. So it is very interesting. I would read this maybe after having read the Rousseau's text on the state of nature, because I feel like he's very directly responding to him. But yeah, very cool. I recommend Baudelaire. All right, so that was it. Thank you, Uktuf. I'll see you on the other side. Anything you want to say before the end?
No, just happy readings.
Happy readings.